Good morning, NCECA friends. My name is Cindy Brocker. I'm the Communications Director of NCECA, and I would like to welcome you to Friday. It's kind of sad to me to think that this is all almost over and I have to start hugging people goodbye instead of hugging them hello. I would like to remind you to turn off your cell phones or at least silence them. And also, if you have not yet voted for board members, voting closes today at 4 o'clock, I believe, so get your votes in. Last I heard, we were really close to hitting 1,000, so if you haven't voted, please do so. I'm really excited about the second year of Blinc programming, second day of the second year of Blinc programming. And so what you're going to see today is you're going to have 4 presentations, and each presenter has 20 slides that will display for 20 seconds each and then automatically advance as they talk about them. So the entire presentation is 6 minutes and 40 seconds. So you're not here to see me talk, you're here to see them talk. So without further ado, we will start with our first speaker.
Hi, thanks for coming. Why I'm here is now partly to do with the Woodfire Conference in the Wabansi last October. There I was a speaker at a most interesting event. During the conference I heard so much about the NCECA I felt that I had to go and see for myself. I must say it's a pretty amazing event. I'm going to start and finish with a little quote from Donna Tartt's latest book, The Goldfinch. There are about art. In a roundabout way, the whole book is why we make and why we collect beautiful things. The question has been raised here, art, craft, function, non-function. I don't really think that there is a question at all. There's only a process in which byproducts of our curiosity emerge, footprints on the maker's path. It's another matter whether these pots, these paint marks on canvas are saying anything. If a painting really works, this is the first quote. If a painting really works down in your heart and changes the way you see, you think and feel, you don't think, oh, I love this picture because it's universal. I love this painting because it speaks to all mankind. That's not the reason anyone loves a piece of art. It's a secret whisper from the alleyway. Psst! Hey, you kid! Yes, you! Originally, the title of my work came from an article by the German ceramic journalist Walter Lochau. The vessel, or pot, and its image was in German. Some asked if the translation should not have been the potter and his image. That's also a nice theme, maybe next time. With the task of putting a talk together like this, one is confronted with the bugging questions like, why do I make these things? Do they have any meaning other than for my own personal enjoyment? Positive, thankfully, with enough supporters, buyers, to enable me to follow this track. Positive critique is always nice. Maybe it's just the artist's insatiable ego, but really, why do we make these things if we don't seek some sort of response? Positive or negative, the alternative is pretty lonely. Anyhow, how we makers see our own work is at most only half of the picture. We only receive the other half, completing space and time through the eyes of the others. So I enjoyed what I did and got some pats on the back. Probably that should be enough, a luxury when it works. But in my little universe, there was a space-time reality locked up in these simple clay forms. The jar and the bowl as archetypal forms. I felt they go a lot deeper than we can imagine. What a major cultural change that must have been when we began to store and share food in those simple forms. Now, how did I start in clay? Like many other potters, when confronted with Japanese culture and its beauty criteria, it just knocked me out. I seemed not to have any choice but to start on a journey towards the seemingly incomprehensible aesthetic continent. Now, over 40 years later, I'm still exploring the simple vessel, formed earth with water and fire. In the 70s, you would probably have called me a Leach disciple. He helped to an understanding of the Far East from a European perspective. In the 80s, my little dream of a country home with family, workshop, amazingly started coming true. It never got as far as owning a clay seam and a little forest, though. Then at the beginning of the 90s, without in any way being unhappy with the work I was making, I slipped into a new space. My work almost lost a complete dimension as my group of supporters gained one. Looking back, it seems that something shifted. It shifted from trying to copy the work I liked so much to more the idea of them and all the beauty and shortcomings of clay, water, and fire. Instead of imitating, I was representing. To finish, here's the second quote. And as much as I'd like to believe there's a truth beyond illusion, I've come to believe that there's no truth beyond illusion. Because between reality on the one hand and the point where the mind strikes reality, there's a middle zone, a rainbow edge where beauty comes into being, where two very different surfaces mingle and blur to provide what life does not. And this is the space where all art exists and all magic. It's the place where reality strikes the ideal, where a joke becomes serious and anything serious is a joke. The magic point where every idea and its opposite are equally true. Thank you very much. I spoke too fast. There's one more slide to come.
Kind of too short to see the slides. Okay. Hello, my name is Jessica Gardner, and my presentation today is E1, When Energy and Inspiration Run Dry. I recently had a drastic shift in my studio work, and this presentation illustrates what I learned about what to do and what not to do when going through that process. My previous body of work began during my postbac at University of Florida. This work is based on childhood development theory, and these slip-dipped, empty children's clothes are intended to invite viewers to be introspective about their adult persona. My thesis exhibition at Georgia State University expanded on this theme and included oversized toys and an adult-sized treehouse for viewers to explore. I was also often asked if this work meant I wanted children, but the truth is that my figures are more like portraits of myself and those close to me. Soon after grad school, I had a solo show at Pittsburgh State University. My figures had morphed into balloons and other objects and still incorporated interactive elements. My sketchbook was full of developmental theories and new work ideas. I felt confident and excited about this work. Then I was blessed with 2 little boys. And suddenly I was no longer interested in making work about childhood development. Instead, I was knee-deep in the actual process. And diapers. Breast pumps and diapers were introduced to my life, and studio time became extremely limited. My work changed immediately, but perhaps too literally. Between teaching and children, finding time to create large figures was nearly impossible. The figures I did make were weighed down by clocks, and my exhibition here in Oregon at the Maud Kearns Art Center, viewers could hear a quiet ticking noise in the gallery. But the more I explored this idea of the weight and pressure of time, the more I knew I was on the wrong path. I was holding on to the figure, holding on to the past research, and not accepting that this body of work was done. I was at a loss of what to do next. I had a solo show a year out and felt trapped. Panic set in. I had sketches of figures I did not want to create, and a vague notion that breast pumps and Madonna figurines were where I wanted to go. So with this glimmer of an idea, I went to talk to the curator at the Schlesinger Center where I was scheduled to show. This is the part where you can learn from my challenges. I had a contract for figurative work, but I was excited about some of the slip casting I had started. So I took rough clay tests and met with the curator, Mary, and said, I want to make porcelain breast pumps with teeth and squished Madonna figurines. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. That's all I said. And I said it really nervously. It was great. It could have gone really badly. Surprisingly, she said, I trust you. Make what you need to make. This faith in me was scary but empowering, and I started to look at my work through the lens of my new life. Multiples mirrored repetitive actions like pumping at work and were achievable in my now segmented studio time. Domestic items like breast pumps, bottles, and plates were paired with Madonna figures that I layered with articles about the benefits of breastfeeding while I was struggling to supply my own infant. The Madonna's expression of calm felt unachievable for a mom who kept finding mystery stains on her shirt. True story. Further inspiration came from mommy blogs, where acronyms ran rampant. I could hardly find an answer to a simple question and felt isolated by the experience. I began using acronyms in my work as a way to share these feelings of disorientation with my viewer. Now only a few months from my show, fear really set in. The previous work was backed by years of research and academic critique. This work is based on raw emotion and is extremely revealing. What if everyone hated it? What if the faith that my family and curator had in me was misplaced? This next piece exemplifies my struggle for balance in this process. Lacking sleep, confidence, and drowning in laundry, I knew I needed to find a way to tie it all together and simultaneously get myself into the studio with more consistency. So I gave myself a homework assignment. Mother's meditation was based on a daily art exercise. I would slip cast or press mold the figures, then alter it based on my experience of motherhood that day. There are empty spaces in this piece for the days when I honestly did not find the time for the studio. But many days getting into the studio for this piece led to making progress on others. Now it was crunch time. Press releases and regular updates to my curator should have been easy, but I was working in a new way, small parallel steps across multiple pieces. Mary was not thrilled when I told her that half the show was almost done, but I knew I was getting there. I also needed to find time to write a new artist statement. Unlike in the past, I couldn't tweak or alter my previous statement. I needed to start from scratch and speak honestly about this deeply personal work. I asked a lot of people to read it, edited it a lot, and I still think it's too lengthy. Working on it. Installing the show was exciting and daunting. I realized how priceless Mary's faith in me had been. I had been in a panic and hadn't been able to tell her where I was headed, but I really could have provided sketches or something. Poor lady. I also couldn't have managed without the support of my friends and family, and I only hoped the show wouldn't disappoint them. In the end, I realized I wasn't afraid that everyone would hate my new work. I was scared that everyone would think it was okay, expected, predictable. What I wanted was the work to be thought-provoking and resonate with my viewer, and for some, I think it did. I'm excited to continue with this new body of work and gain inspiration daily from my life as an artist and a mother. To summarize, don't panic. This is a normal part of the creative process. Keep experimenting. I found my way by making a lot of work that I will never show you all. Find support. Everything is better with support. And again, don't panic. If you are pushing yourself to make authentic work, It will be great. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andrew Potter, and I'm breaking the rules a little. I think I'm advancing my own slides. This morning, I'd like to tell you the stories behind and in front of a project of mine called Mythology of a History Lesson. Like many of our favorite stories, these stories are about girls and boys, evil and good, West and East, and the convolutions of German, East German, and North American identity. The title of this work is The German Question. Goldfinch and Winnetou prepare to rescue Anne Frank from the Stasi prison on Guantanamo. Once upon a time in 1893, there lived a German writer of Orientalist adventure novels named Karl May. Mr. May was a thief and a fraud, and sometimes he had a hard time telling the difference between reality and the world in his mind. Probably the most famous character Mr. May ever penned was the Apache chief named Winnetou. Winnetou carried a special gun, converted to Christianity, and made friends with Germans who, according to Mr. May, were the most civilized white people to participate in the colonization of America. Like many stories, Mr. May's story of Winnetou was a magic story that helped nurture a popular obsession with Native Americans that continues in Germany to this day. So it was that the myths of the noble savage and the American West were first brought to the German people. 36 years after the birth of Winnetou, another very important German was born, named Anne. Anne was still very young when an evil fascist dictator took over her land, killing many people, including very many Jewish people. Anne fled with her family, and while she was in hiding, she became a writer too. Anne wrote a magic story of love, life, and artistic ambition. She knew the difference between good and evil, cowboys and Indians, victims, terrorists, and torturers. Anne was hunted down by the evil dictator, but her story outlived him and continues to shape the way we understand the world today. So it was that a young Jewish girl became one of the most important, famous, and beloved Germans of all time. Winnetou was 56 when the evil dictator was finally defeated. The German land was divided into East and West because nobody trusted the Germans anymore to look after themselves. Mr. Walter Ulbricht became the first Communist Party leader of the German Democratic Republic. It was his good luck that all the evil fascists who had worked for the evil dictator turned out to be West Germans. But just to be on the safe side, Mr. Ulbricht and his friends developed a very elaborate police and spy network called the Ministerium für Staatssicherheit, which roughly translates to Bureau for the Security of Our Homeland. It was their job to protect the East Germans against evil terrorists who would threaten the socialist way of life. And doesn't everyone want to help in the war against terrorism? So it was that the Stasi grew to include approximately 1 in 6 East German citizens. So young East Germans learned to play Indians and cowboys, while young West Germans learned to play cowboys and Indians. But all German children had reason to celebrate in 1964 when Winnetou's magic story was finally made into a movie. Now, Winnetou's magic had not been weakened by the war. In fact, it had grown so far and wide that it charmed the life of the young actor Gojko Mitic while he was growing up on a farm in southern Serbia. Though he didn't know it, Gojko had been given a piece of Winnetou's spirit. And the German filmmakers saw this and asked him to come back to East Germany, where he became the star of many more films, and the people called him Winnetou of the East. So it was that a Serbian farmer became the most important Indian chief of the German Democratic Republic. Winnetou was just 4 years shy of 100 when another young girl named Anne Drew sat in her living room in Berkeley, California, watching the news as hundreds of Germans swarmed over a big concrete wall. It turned out that Mr. Ulbricht and his successors had had a hard time distinguishing socialism from social control, and they had got it all botched up. The Stasi were having a hard time telling the terrorists from the people who just looked like them, because everyone was wearing the same Erich Honecker glasses. And the people who weren't terrorists were getting pretty fed up. Anne saw a pivotal moment in history. Like the German children playing Indians and cowboys, she wanted to fight the bad guys, save the other Anne, and be on the side of Winnetou and Gojko Mitic. So it was that Anne Drew found herself in Berlin, drawing together threads from recent German history, retelling this story of the ultimate battle of good versus evil. Now, Anne Drew had been a very good student in school, and she had learned all about how sometimes a story that we tell in the present makes us think there is only one path to the future. She had learned how this kind of storytelling can influence politics and popular opinion to shape our path toward the one story, and how art could play along with this story, summoning the emotional power of images. She also knew that the most common reason this kind of story was told was so that some people could make money. Anne Drew saw a parallel between the mythologies of her beloved North American West and the reunification of Germany, and remembered why she was happy when the wall fell. Not so that East Germans could face unemployment, unaffordable housing, and derogatory prejudice, but because now we could finally be friends. So now in Calgary, Anne Drew continues to wonder, where is our land and who belongs on it? How do our stories of Indians and cowboys affect who we are today and our future? And what story can we tell so that history is not inevitable? Thanks.
I'm going to stand off to the side here a little bit so I can see what's going on. So, my name is Monette Mark, and I have a bit of a different story to tell you. This is about a collaborative project, and it started at last year's NCECA. Alexis Gregg and Tanner Coleman put together a proposal for Project Space last year to create this mural in honor of Glenda Taylor. And they cut it apart into tiles, and we loaded it into our van and hauled it to Washburn University, where it would later be installed. So I'm going to kind of tell you in bullet points our step-by-step process. The project was amazing. We let it sit and dry for several months, and then when we pulled it out of the kiln, we set it up on tables. Luckily, just a little chip at the bottom broke, and other than that, we had great success. During the time it was drying, we did some test tiles and decided on earth tones for the composition of the glazes. We pretty much ended up with oxides and just a few glazes. We had a great amount of volunteers to help with this. There were so many people who were involved, and it was a really wonderful process. Here's the finished piece before it went into the kiln, but Michael Bradley came up with an idea to make the centerpiece gold luster, and you don't see it in there right now. Excuse me, because it was set aside to go into a different kiln firing. But we loaded everything in, and when we pulled it out again, we traced around all of the tiles to create a template. So there was The success of this was in the planning and doing all the detailed work with the template design. You can see the template here on the wall. We set it up so we knew where each piece would be. In the back of each tile was a hole, at least one, if not 5, where we had screws to use for extra support. So each of those had to be located. And after that, we put up a mortar and stuck the pieces to the walls. But this was a little bit of a challenge because of the shape of the mural. We started at the top instead of normally at the bottom, just because of the round shape. And this is the end of day 1 of installing. But when we put up these pieces, we also used nails at the bottom to hold them up, to give them a little bit more support, and we took those out later. And we had to prop some of the big pieces up as well. You can kind of see that board sticking out there. During the installation, Kathy Falk came up with the idea of people collecting notes to Glenda, or whatever personal thing that they would like to say. And we put a call out on Facebook, and we received a lot of different notes that we collected and put into the hollows of this mural. So it's also a time capsule of sorts as well. We had a great time putting this together. It went up, actually, I think, fairly smoothly once we got our learning curve down. And the notes that we put in were going to be there forever, so that was something that we were very, we thought of, every day, as well as the notes on the outside that were written on the piece. So I'm getting behind, but Alexis and Tanner, luckily, were coming through Kansas, and they got to see the piece finished. We hadn't finished painting and everything yet, but they got to see the final piece installed. And then at the opening, Josiah, Glenda Taylor's husband, cut the ribbon, dropped the curtain, and we dedicated this piece to her. It was a really great event. A lot of people came. We filled our art building with supporters, and just the love for Glenda Taylor. She was a professor and the head of the art department at Washburn University for many years. And if you don't know the backstory, she was killed in a cycling accident. And that's one of the reasons that this is a special memorial and 2 of my favorite photos. The cyclists that she rode with, and this is her mom and dad. And she had this smile that you wouldn't forget. You can tell that she got that from her mom. It was, and that's another reason why this collaboration was all so important. The group of volunteers, many of them, or a few of them are here actually, that put up the mural. We're a motley crew, but everyone loved Glenda, and we all wanted to show our love for her in doing this. Last fall, we put a mosaic across the bottom to kind of ground it, and also a baseboard to keep the custodians from bumping into it with their machines. Also, during the fall, I think I missed a slide, but we got the final signage up for it. I tried to take a picture of it, but it was really reflective, so I just put the text up here for you. And it explains a little bit about the making of the mural and designing it, and what Alexis and Tanner did for us to start us out. Also during the fall, we created a second section, and maybe I can tell you more about that next year. But the second section is called Gusto, Glenda's Mural, and now we have this great big beautiful wall dedicated to her. So, thank you.